Greetings, Tony Mobley here. Conversation with Tony Mobley is back. Tonight we're having a very special episode. This is Monday night. We're normally on a Wednesday night. Today I'm having a conversation with Catherine Harrop. Today she is interviewing me. That's right, she's interviewing me today.
And I'm going to be tough, Tony. I'm going to be tough.
We will try to get our interview with Chris Fenwick that we missed last week next month. Today is episode 36. That's right, episode 36 of Conversation with Tony Mobley. Why are we here? We're here because life has provided me the opportunity to have real conversations with real people. First, I want to thank Mr. Courtney Gooden for our last conversation on Conversations with Tony Mobley. And I want to thank the team behind Conversations with Tony Mobley. So we are here to have real conversation. So again, this time, Catherine Harrop is going to be interviewing me. We hope to help others with these conversations, but I need your help. I really need your help. Guys, we don't have any questions yet. So we need you to ask your questions. And you can ask your questions in the YouTube chat, but we would prefer that you try to put your questions in the Mukana chat. The reason why we want you to do it in the Mukana chat is because you can ask your questions and then your questions can be voted up and down. That's right. So if you want to get your question in, get it in early so that it can be voted on. And so that we make sure that we get that question asked and hopefully answered tonight. If you like this and past conversations, we ask that you like and subscribe. Today, we're doing something a little different in that Catherine will be asking me questions. And so set the bell so that you get all of the notifications and be reminded of all the upcoming conversations on Conversation with Tony Mobley. And now I'm handing the show over to Catherine. Catherine, you are in charge.
Tony, what does that feel like? Is it like giving over your firstborn?
It's I didn't realize that it was going to I've never been on this side of it in Conversation with Tony Mobley. So this is a new experience for me.
Well, you just relax, and we're here to discover all about you tonight because, of course, Here we are with the host of Conversations with Tony Mobley, dad, husband, cancer survivor, knowledge seeker. And, Tony, we've been talking to a few of your friends, and they have described you as curious and caring. Now, I don't think they meant you were particularly curious. I think they meant you had curiosity. And someone else said you are a kind of interviewer that makes people feel seen. That's pretty complimentary. Pretty cool. Oh, and by the way, I forgot the most important thing of all. Happy birthday, Tony.
Thank you, Catherine. I really appreciate that.
So tell me, right off the bat, you're a little croaky right now. Do you want to share with me why you sound a little husky?
So I'm going to try to give you the short version of it. So the short version of it is that when I joined the office hours community, I was trying to help a congregation, Miracle Bible Way Church of Macon, Georgia. They had experienced the pandemic and were no longer able to have worship services in person. And so because they were forced to try to figure out another way to have services, they reached out to me and through my wife, and we provided as much support as we could. Miracle Bible Way is pastored by Minister Patsy Willis, 92-year-old pastor. And so we started to have we tried a couple of different things, and we ended up settling on Zoom. And as it was probably at the middle part of my cancer journey in terms of getting treatment. And so I started working with them, and I found office hours, and I began working with them and gleaning as much information as I could from the office hours community, and they helped me tremendously. So we get to the point where my voice, I have actually received a promotion from Miracle Bible Way and Pastor Willis, in that they have asked me to be an associate minister for the church. And they have asked me to preach on every third Sunday of the month. And so that I am one of, I'm going to say, dynamic, spirit-filled ministers who is preaching for the church. And so yesterday was my inaugural third Sunday preaching opportunity. And I was all in. And so the reason for my voice to be the way it is.
Was the Spirit moving in you?
Yes, it was.
That's excellent. Oh, that's excellent.
And
so
it
how
is on
long
YouTube,
how long did you actually
but
preach?
it's going to be private. Right at about 45 minutes.
Wow. Well,
So that was long for me.
No wonder you have no voice left. Well, we have enough, I hope. Well, congratulations, because, that's been a long journey to that, hasn't it?
Yes, it has.
So we're going to go into the Wayback Machine now. And I'm going to ask you a bunch of short snappers, okay? Are you ready?
Sure.
Okay, 1 or 2 answers. Okay, where were you born?
I was born in Norfolk, Virginia, but I grew up in Newark, New Jersey.
Okay, where do you live now?
I live in Noonan, Georgia, which is about 45 minutes south of Atlanta.
Okay. You come from a family of how many children?
There are 7 of us. I am the oldest.
That explains a lot, Tony. That comes from someone who's actually the youngest. Now, where did you grow up? You grew up in
I grew up in Newark, New Jersey.
Right. And how young are you turning today?
I am 64 years old today.
Well, again, congratulations. Now, I want to see if our graphics guy can bring up little Tony Mobley, because we're going way back to the beginning. If we can, there's just a lovely picture of you as a little tiny boy, little tiny baby, and little tiny boy. And they're going to find that for us. Because to coin the phrase that you've been using all along, Tony Mobley, who are you?
Who am I?
There you are.
There I am. Yeah. I am a product of very proud parents who had to figure things out. And my mother was a person who had a lot of difficulty. Her mother was not able to be with her when she was growing up, and she was passed around from relatives. And because of that, she she had to excel in school. And because of the circumstances in which she grew up, she made it a point of not allowing us to be limited by the surroundings that we were in.
What do you mean by that, Tony?
She made it a point for us to have exposure. And so I grew up in Newark, New Jersey in the early 60s. And I was there when, I think I was 10 years old when the riots of 1968 happened. Mm-hmm. And I remember the bullets, a bullet coming through our window. I remember my father grabbing, because I think at that time there was only 5 of us, maybe 4. And he, was shielding us. And where we lived was probably 4 houses away from the major strip, which was Clinton Avenue. And those people who are familiar with Newark, it's a major thoroughfare in the southern part of the city, South Ward. And we could see and we could hear the looting and the things that were going on. And so it impacts you when you experience that and when you hear that and you see that. And so my mother made it a point for us not to be limited by our surroundings. A lot of children that grew up where I grew up, they did not venture far beyond their neighborhood. You everything that you needed was in your neighborhood for the most part. And that did change after the riots. My mother made it a point for us to go to New York City to experience Broadway plays and musicals and the public library and museums. And I grew up in a very religious family, and we would have bus rides we would go to Montreal, we would go to Niagara Falls, we would go to Pennsylvania Dutch country.
Wow.
We would go to Baltimore, Washington, D.C. We were always going on an adventure. And then the other thing that we did until I was about 12 years old, we would go to Florida, where my father grew up, and before Disney World, when it was just orange groves. And we would go there for 2 weeks every summer.
Now tell me, going down as an African-American Black family, driving from Newark to Orlando, what was that like in the 60s?
I would say for the most part, it was okay, in that there was one particular incident when I didn't even understand what was happening at the time. My father was pulled over in, I think it was Sylvester, Georgia, and he was taken to jail. And I think it was Bethel AME Church reached out to my mother, and it took 3 days for my uncle, Freddie Mobley, who was in the Air Force at the time, to wire the funds to get my dad released. So he was in jail for 3 days, and he was just pulled over, and they said he was speeding, and my mother said he wasn't. And you have to understand at that time, you could not go to a hotel or motel, and the idea was that you would stop along the way with relatives or people who knew people, and you would stay with them. And if you couldn't do that, then you would pull over on the side of the road. And that was the reality of that experience. And so I think after that experience, we 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 made a few more trips, but it kind of it waned, and I think that was, I know it was traumatic for my mother, and it was, you know, it was scary for the family. But as I said, I was young enough that I didn't quite understand all of the aspects of what was going on. So I think those kind of things impact you, and yeah.
How did the riots in 1967, I think they were, weren't they, in Newark?
68.
68. They closed down the high school too, in the middle of school, in the middle of the city. How did that affect where you ended up going to high school?
Well, it's interesting story. I was what you would call a very good athlete. I played football and basketball extremely well.
Wait. Were you always a really good athlete? I seem to remember when you talked
No,
about joining the basketball team.
yeah. What happened? What happened was
We have proof. We have proof.
yeah. So in middle school, I tried out for the team, and there were so many people that were much better than me. But I ended up making the team, and I found out later that I was only on the team because they wanted somebody that had a good GPA to bring the GPAs of the team up. And so that was the only reason I was on the team. But I took that as a challenge. And so I was the best. I was the defensive stopper. So if you had somebody that was a great scorer on another team, then they would put me on them, and I would shut them down. And then
So you became one of the best basketball
I became
players.
one of the best.
And you were the smartest.
I wouldn't say I was the smartest, but I was a good student in middle school. I ended up, when I graduated from middle school, I had the third highest GPA of my class.
Do you attribute that academic success a bit to your mom and her desire to show you how to? Yeah?
Absolutely. She went to, she graduated very high from high school. She grew up in Farmville, Virginia, and she went to college at, I'm going to say, in her 40s and finished. And my mother came to Newark and started working as a domestic. And she worked, I'm going to say, up until the time from probably 20 years old to about the time I was born. And that was her job. She worked as a domestic. And she went from that domestic job to actually being employed by the post office. And then she went from the post office to the Internal Revenue. And so she would catch the train from Newark and ride it to the IRS building in New York City every day. And so it's an amazing achievement for a person who started out as a domestic and then ends up working as an agent for the IRS.
And she had 7 children.
And she had 7 children, and she went to school at night and got her community college degree, and was going to get her bachelor's degree, but made the decision that she wasn't going to go any further with it. But she could have done it because she was a very smart woman.
Wow.
And she had to be.
Yeah, sounds like it. So she inspired you, and you moved, so you became this incredible athlete, this great academic. Okay, third highest GPA. You you're heading to high school and you're thinking, football. I could be a football player. And what happened?
Yeah. I was all set to go to Weequahic High School in Newark, which was kind of known to be a powerhouse football team at the time. And I didn't actually live in that part of Newark, but things were going to be managed so that I could go to that high school and play football. And my mother decided, no, you're not going there. So she enrolled me in St. Benedict's Prep, which had been in, I think, the city of Newark since 1888, I believe. And the enrollment was majority Catholic enrollment. And after the riots, the population of the school dwindled. And the year before I went there, they had shut down, 1972. And they reopened the next year, 1973, and they had made the decision that they were going to serve the community in which the school was. So these Benedictine monks opened the school, and they were ahead of their time. And the reason why I say that they were ahead of their time was because they had project-based learning.
Oh, wait. Before you get into project-based learning, I want to take you back again to that sports thing, because you wanted to be football player, right?
Yeah.
Now
I was so good at football.
But they didn't have a football team.
When the school shut down, that was the end of the football program.
So tell me a little bit about playing basketball in high school.
So I was challenged by the headmaster, Father Edwin Leahy. You think you're pretty good? Well, let's see what you got. And so he ended up introducing me to one of my future teammates, and he said, "Well, I want y'all to play one-on-one." And so we played one-on-one, and so we played 3 games, and he beat me the first game, and I was like, "Oh no!" So I ended up beating him the last 2 games, and so his name was Anthony Badger, and very good guy.
But you were,
they had that. Friends.
Tell me about the story, though, about how you got your nickname.
You know about my nickname?
I know all about your nickname.
Oh, my goodness. Okay. So my nickname, they called me Juju.
Oh.
Is that the nickname that you were talking about?
No, that wasn't the one I was thinking of. But what was Juju? Where did that come from?
Oh.
You just gave away another piece of yourself, Tony.
Okay. So
what was the Juju thing?
My teammate, Robert Wright, who is, I think his family is actually from Georgia. He started calling me that. And so, as you can imagine, I didn't really like it. But it caught on, and we would be playing games, and they'd be saying, Juju, 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 Juju. And so it just kind of stuck.
Okay, but tell me the story about the other name.
Now, you have to tell me what the other name is.
Church Boy.
Oh, Church Boy. Well, that was a neighborhood name.
Oh.
That was a neighborhood name. That wasn't the
my research has failed me. That wasn't from school. Oh, okay.
No, that was a neighborhood thing. So as I shared, my parents were very devout, and they called me church boy because we be playing, Tony, let's go. Got to go to church. And so they were, oh man, church boy, always got to go to church. And so they would call me church boy. And so church boy saved my life because, when you're young, you don't think about your surroundings and things. And I'm just going to say it this way. There were a lot of different things that were going on around me. There was drugs, and there was crime, and there was people being robbed, and things were happening. But when you are young and it's part of your experience, it doesn't register. And so there were all kinds of things going on, people buying drugs, people selling drugs, people using drugs, people being mean to each other. That's the way I can describe it. And so there was a particular instance because I was oblivious. And the thing about what you have to understand is that when you grow up in a community like that, you have built-in guards, and things happen around you that would make other people afraid who were not in that environment. But because you're in that environment, you are not sensitized to it. And I didn't realize it until I left Newark and came back to visit. But the story of Church Boy was all of my life in the neighborhood. That's what I was known by. And so I knew a lot of people that knew me. Some of them didn't even know my name. They just knew I was Church Boy. And so there was a particular instance when I think I was about 14 or 15. I had just started going to St. Benedict's Prep in Newark. And I was coming home. I had a book bag. I had my uniform in it. I had my game Snickers in it. And these three guys came up to me, and they pulled out a gun, and they told me, "Give me the stuff you have in your bag. We want those Snickers." And I was about to hand it over. And I was like, come on, guys, let me slide with this, this time. And they were like, "No, you're going to give it to us." And so by that time, another guy pulled up in a car, and he said, "What y'all doing? Leave Church Boy alone. As a matter of fact, if you see him coming, you go the other way, because that's our Church Boy. And he's going to make something of himself, and we're proud of him. So you leave him alone." And they left me alone. And I guess the word got out because I never was bothered ever again.
Wow.
And it was, to see the gun, it kind of unnerves you. But yeah, that's the story of Church Boy.
What role do you think God's played in your life?
Oh, I've always been in the church. My mother was, she started out Baptist. She went to Pentecostal. She was back to Baptist. She spent a short time Jehovah's Witness. She came back to Baptist,
And then sent you to a Catholic prep school.
And she sent me to a Catholic. But interesting enough, that Catholic high school ended up at some point starting a choir. And I think...
Choir?
Yeah.
Were you good at that too?
I was a background singer, but I was not a background singer in the St. Benedict's Prep's choir. But my brother ended up being one of the pianists for the choir, and that's another show. I'm going to have him on one day, and he'll talk about him in the gospel choir, St. Benedict's Prep.
Fair enough. Fair enough. But tell me about what that high school brought to you, how it changed you, gave you the skills for the next step in your life. As you said, you started to talk about project-based learning, which is kind of the norm now in a lot of places, but it was pretty avant-garde then, right?
Absolutely. There was, I didn't know of any schools that were doing it in the 70s. So we had what they called the spring phase. So that was basically May to June. We would do special projects. And those projects were, one of the projects that I participated in was called the bike hike. And it was 1976, bicentennial of the United States. And we got on bikes and we rode to some of the Revolutionary War sites. We had to do a report on the site that we went to, our experience of riding the bikes. And so we had a van that followed us, and the van had tents and padding and anything that we needed while we were riding the bicycles. And so that was one of the things. It was a fantastic experience, riding up and down different places in New Jersey and Revolutionary War sites in New Jersey and Pennsylvania. It was awesome.
And awesome. They did something else too. They did theater. In fact, I think we have a picture of you during it, but that's probably later. But you were the theater gave you a different kind of skill set, right?
Well, we had one project phase. We did Androcles and the Lion, and we
it's a bit
thorny
subject.
We performed Androcles and the Lion at elementary schools in the city of Newark, right. And so we would go all around, and so there were 3 teams. So we would rotate from the actors. Then we had the staging team and we had the lighting team. And so all 3 teams got to do all 3 roles during the course of that project phase. So that was an interesting, very, and just to see the little children, marvel at what we were doing. Other high schools couldn't do that because they were in regular education, but we were actually coming to elementary schools and performing and learning different components. We had to be the actors, we had to be the stagehands, we had to be the lighting people and lighting and music and all of that. It was great. And
so maybe it whet your appetite for education the way it should be.
I would say that it did. Absolutely.
Exciting.
Absolutely it did. And so then there was one phase where we did photography and we learned how to do dark room, mixing the chemicals and develop film and all of that. So that was another great experience. My father had brought home a German 35 millimeter camera from World War II, and he let me use it. And I was one of the few kids that actually had a 35 millimeter camera that was a quality camera. And I took as many photos, and then it got stolen. But I did have a good time, while I had it.
Now, where did you pick up your printing skills? Was that much later?
That was much later. That was after high school. But the developing of film is very close to developing plates for offset presses. So there's a correlation between learning how to develop film and then learning how to develop plates to put on an offset press.
Wow. Okay, so we're leaping ahead now. We're into dating. You tried college, you broke your foot playing basketball, right? You dropped out of college, you were dating someone who just happened to know someone else and get you into vocational school that was all about printing, right?
Right. So I had a young lady I was dating, and her mother worked for the city of Newark. And
does Kimberly know about this, by the way? Because maybe we shouldn't be talking about this on your birthday.
We never talked about it, but I think I've been with her 32 years in May, so I think it'll be okay.
You think you're safe? Okay.
I think I'm safe.
All right. Just checking.
So I'm not going to say her name, but anyway, her mother worked for the city of Newark, and had started. This was much after the riots, and so they had started all of these initiatives for helping people who had finished high school but didn't have any trade skills. And so she introduced me to the manager for all of the printing for the city of Newark. And so it was a pilot program, actually. And so they gave me the opportunity to learn how to run a printing press. And because I knew how to work in the dark room and develop the plates, that went hand in hand with, learning how to become a pressman. And so I worked there for about 2.5 years. And then the idea was that you learn the skill and then you move on to a company that would take you as an apprentice so that you can further learn your skills. And so while I was there, shortly before I left, I made the decision to go to Manhattan School of Printing. I don't know if they still exist or not, but anyway, I would catch the subway, the train rather, to New York City. I think twice a week. I think it was Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I would learn all about printing from the giant Heidelberg printing press to all kinds of exposure. Of course, New York City being what it was, there were tons and tons of different printing companies. I ended up working for, I got a job at a corrugation house in
That's
New
cardboard
Jersey.
boxes, right?
Right. And so the part where I worked, the machine that I worked on was probably bigger than a house inside this plant. And what we did was we would print on the cardboard boxes. And so if you saw a cardboard box that had a lot of coloring or printing on the outside of it, that was what we did. And so it was all paper, all of it's paper. You don't think that cardboard box you think cardboard is cardboard, but cardboard is all it is pressed paper. And so we ended up, I ended up working there, and I worked there for a couple of years, and it was really good. And then I had I was having some spiritual issues in terms of being addressed in the church, and so I ended up quitting that job and moving to Atlanta.
Okay, before we get to that story, we have a question from Gary Lund in McKinney, Texas. Favorite hobbies growing up then and now? Have they changed?
Well, my favorite hobbies were definitely playing basketball and football. Are those still your favorite hobbies? No, definitely not. But I was a reader. I love to read. I liked comic books. I like one of my sisters would say I was kind of a history buff in that I just liked interesting things, and I would because of the exposure that I had at St. Benedict's Prep, and because all of the things that my mother had exposed us to, I guess I was a geek before it was even talked about being a geek. And one of the things that became a hobby was computers. And one of the jobs that I had after I got married, one of the jobs I had was working at Big Brothers Big Sisters. And this was at a time when they were just sort of introducing computers computers were becoming mainstream. And so one of the things that I did was I would read all about all the different computers and compact computers. And I can't even think of some of the older ones that I played around with. But before I had a computer, I would read about it and I would study. And so I was working for Big Brothers Big Sisters, and they got a computer. I had my own computer at work, and I would be on it. And so my wife got mad because I would stay after hours after work to play on the computer.
Well, and that certainly hasn't changed, has it?
So she bought me a computer.
And maybe you got a house where you could be in a different room too.
Yeah. So,
but let's just, I want to get to that one spot where now you have these printing skills, and it doesn't seem like it's going to be your profession for life, because something happens and you get to say the same line that has become so famous in the world. Go ahead.
So I was wrestling with my calling, and I had just been licensed by my pastor at the church. And I had actually been licensed probably a couple of years by then. And so I was, I had conversation with him, and my mother and I were having a lot of conversations, and I was telling her that I had a dream that I was a student at Morehouse College.
Now, did you actually have a dream?
I had a dream.
Or was this a goal?
No, I had a dream that I was a student at Morehouse College. And I was like, I didn't hardly even know much about Atlanta or even Morehouse College. I knew that Dr. King had gone there, but that's all I really knew. And so I was telling her about the dream, and she said, you when you have a dream like that, you need to act on it. And so I said, but going to Atlanta, and so it as it turns out, my father had a cousin that lived in Atlanta at the time. And so we made a plan. And so this was probably, I'm going to say maybe July or August, something like that. My mother and I were talking about it. And so November 1st, 1982, I got on a plane, came to Atlanta. I had on a full-length leather coat, sweaters, boots, and it was only 82 degrees. Only 82 degrees. So I quickly got out of those clothes, and probably I don't remember. It was sort of the weekend. I think that Monday.
Okay, so you got on a plane. You got on a plane. You head to Morehouse College. You haven't applied. It's a one-way ticket. You haven't applied. You just had a dream.
Yeah.
Okay. So there you are.
Monday morning, I rolled up to the campus and went to the dean of the chapel, Dean Lawrence Edward Carter Sr., PhD, Dean of the Chapel, Morehouse, Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Chapel, campus of Morehouse College. And asked him if I could speak with him. And so waited maybe 30, 40 minutes. And what can I do for you, young man? And I told him who I was, what I had done. SGA president, captain of the basketball team, went to school, got injured, and I have this calling, and I need to be here. I need to be a student, and I have some skills. I can run your printing press for you. If the school has a printing press, I can run it for you.
You didn't even know if they had a printing press?
I didn't know.
So this is November. Like
Yes,
school's
this is
already
November.
started.
School's already started.
You have no application,
No application.
but you have skills for something you don't even know if they have or not.
Right.
But you have a
Well,
dream.
my plan was if they didn't, that I would find a job somewhere nearby and still go to school.
Oh, I see. Okay. I believe you.
And so if they didn't have a press, I would use those skills to fund my education. That was kind of naive in a way, but yeah, that was my plan.
Wow.
So
So did they kick you out?
no, he took me to the Office of Public Relations, headed by Dr. Alan May, who recently passed away, actually. And he said, yes, we have a printing press. We have several printing press, and we do all of the printing here for the campus here in this office. And we left there. He was absolutely, you can work here. Absolutely. Left there, went to financial aid. Well, no, we left him and went to admissions. Got admitted. Sterling Hudson, Dr. Sterling Hudson, he fast-tracked my application. And after that was fast-tracked, then I went to the financial aid office. And I can't think of Miss Carr's first name, but Miss Carr's sweetheart. She, did financial aid for me. And so that was Monday. By Friday, I was fully enrolled to start school in January. And I started school in January. And so 3.5 years later,
you're a Morehouse man.
I graduated from Morehouse. During that time, I never stayed on campus. I rented a room, or I had roommates or apartment living. It was every year I was in a different spot, so it was a different situation. And so
and there you are. Look at you.
So that's me on the right.
Far right.
That's Robert Bolton and Curtis Hubbard and George Render, and those were some of the great guys I hung out with at Morehouse.
Wow, that's pretty cool. A graduate of Morehouse, just on chutzpah, pure chutzpah.
and not only did I graduate, I was a part of the King Players, which is the performance ministry.
We have pictures of that too, don't we?
Yeah.
Okay.
There should be a couple of pictures of that. I was a part of the King Players. And we did a lot of different plays. Most of the plays that we participated in were around homecoming. And most of the time I did that, I was a student.
Oh, look at you are really hot there. Tony, you are hot.
I had 2 jobs most of the time.
I mean, not that you're not now, Tony. I just mean there.
Well,
that cool
I've heard that before. I heard that before. So
didn't it say Tony the King on it or something? Or King Tony? I can't quite see it.
No, it says Captain Tony.
Oh, Captain Tony.
Captain Tony, yeah.
Captain King. Close. So there you are. You're a graduate of Morehouse College. You still want to go into ministry, but again, you're thwarted, right? Again, you have to take a different path, right?
One of the
and we're going to come to office hours soon because we have half an hour left. We want to get to that, but tell me in the intervening years.
So real quickly, one of the things that happened at Morehouse was I had an opportunity to take classes at Interdenominational Theological Center, which is a part of the Atlanta University Center, which Morehouse is part of. Morehouse, Spelman, Morris Brown, Clark College at that time, and now it's Clark Atlanta University have combined. And the Interdenominational Theological Center was part of that community of 5 schools. And so the professors from the Theological Center would come over to Morehouse, and they would give us classes on philosophy of religion, Christian ethics, world religions, and I can't think of all of them, but we had dynamic professors that were at Morehouse, but we also had professors that came from ITC to instruct us as well, those of us who were in philosophy and religion. And so when I finished Morehouse, I worked at on campus in the print shop for probably a couple of months after I graduated. And incidentally, when I graduated, I was awarded the I can't think of her name now, but it was.
You were awarded a woman?
I was awarded an award.
Oh, an award
for community service on campus, and so
wow.
on my it says on my graduation program that I won this community service award because working in a print shop, you make friends. Because people need their stuff done. So I made a lot of friends. And so I ended up getting the award for community service on campus.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, so I was supposed to go to ITC. Well, I was actually supposed to go.
Now, ITC was what?
Interdenominational Theological Center.
Right, gotcha.
Part of the AU Center.
Right.
I was actually
But you couldn't afford it, could you?
Right. I was originally supposed to go to Howard University Divinity School in DC. That didn't work out. And so I enrolled at ITC, and then it was impossible for me to get additional loans to go there. And then I tried to go to Candler School of Theology at Emory University. And they were going to give me 75% tuition scholarship. Unfortunately, the 25% was more than most schools charge for students to be enrolled at that time. So that didn't work out. So I went to work, and so I had various jobs. Worked at the Boys and Girls Club, and I did some different work at printing companies and different things like that.
You worked at Xerox?
I worked at Xerox, but that was after I got married.
Oh, okay. Where did you? Do we have like 3 minutes so you can tell me where you met your wife to be?
So, one of the biggest job that I had, or the job that I did the most after I graduated from college, was working as a substitute teacher or supply teacher at Dean Russ Elementary School in Atlanta. And I worked there for about 3 years. And at the third year, the principal said, you need to go ahead and do what you need to do to get certified. And I would hire you on the spot once you take care of everything. So the plan was to leave Atlanta, go to Macon, and go to, I can't think of the name of the school right now. It's a private school.
Oh, just get to the heart of it, Tony. Get to the heart of it. Where did you spot her? What happened when you saw her?
I took a job as a house parent at the Methodist Children's Home, United Methodist Children's Home in Macon, Georgia. So I had the middle school boys. I was a house parent for them. And so what I was supposed to be doing was going to school during the day, Mercer University. I don't know why I couldn't think of that. I was supposed to go to Mercer University and get my master's in education.
Oh.
And I was supposed to be a house parent. I mean, I was a house parent, and the kids were supposed to be in school during the day, and I would be at Mercer during the day. And then when they got off school, I would be home to take care of them, make sure that they got what they needed and did their homework and all that good stuff. Well, it didn't work out like that because I had middle school boys. They were getting suspended. These were
not
sick.
your boys. These were not your boys.
They're
not your sons. They were
they were not
you
my
were
sons.
doing a house parent. Right. Okay.
I was a house parent for the Methodist Children Home for boys. Well,
Okay.
Methodist Children Home. And I had the middle school age boys.
Right.
And so there was always something going on where I'd have to go to the school to see about somebody, why they were suspended, this, that, and the other. And so what ended up happening was that didn't happen. I did not get a chance to go to Mercer and work on my master's in education. But I did meet Kimberly Worthy. And so she was walking across the campus one day, and I saw her, and I was like, okay, she's a cutie, and so we started out as buddies, talking, about different things, and next thing I knew, I was proposing because we were supposed to have been just friends. And the next thing I knew, I ended up proposing and coming back to Atlanta and going back to supply teaching. And
now, before you move away from the marriage thing, you just have to tell everybody about this one caveat in your marriage contract, which really surprised me because I hadn't thought about it before I got married. And what was that?
Well, I'm gonna just do this as a warning. This is a warning to all men. Before you get married, do not agree to this. Do not agree to this. So I'm going to tell you. My wife said, well, I don't do any cooking. And so because of who I grew up and who my parents were, my father made it a point of making sure that all of his children could cook. So he said, you never know when you might have to cook something for yourself. And so he made it a point of making sure that I knew how to cook.
God bless your father.
So she said, I don't cook. Is that a deal breaker? I said, no, it's not a problem for me. I loved at the time. I had been,
at the time.
I had been cooking for myself for so long at that point, it would, because I was in apartments and housing, and I had to always prepare my own meals. And so it wasn't anything.
But you
new.
started this answer, Tony, with, I want to warn all men,
don't do
quote,
it.
Unquote.
Don't do it. Make it a partnership. I'm just telling you, because almost 32 years later, that was a bad deal.
Smart deal on her part, though.
Well, I'm sure she's happy with it, for the most part. She gets to critique.
I think that's wonderful. Okay, Now we have to skip ahead. 21 minutes left. We have to bring you up to speed we take you into the present.
Okay.
Well, okay, we will mention the whole reason why you started getting involved in office hours. And first of all, just briefly, can you briefly tell me what office hours is?
Office Hours is a community of people who have come together to talk about video production, but it's more than that. It was created by Alex Lindsay when the pandemic first hit, and people who were used to doing in-person video production found they couldn't do in-person video production, so they had to figure out something else. And so it started as a means for these people to figure out how to go forward in the midst of the pandemic. It has turned into extremely positive conversations that have to deal with around video production, but it's more than that. It is a community of people who have made the decision that knowledge and learning and figuring things out is more important than the differences that people have that separate us from one another. They've made the decision that they are going to work together, not keep secret, because in the past, Alex will share that, if you knew something, you kept it to yourself because that would be a thing that you can use in order to maximize your ability to have work.
Gave you an advantage, right?
Gave you an advantage. And that is not the way in which Office Hours operates. It's a community of people who share knowledge and share information and figure things out. And they are more than willing to share that information with people. And so Alex has this mantra of a global community where no one is left behind. And he means it. And so because of that, that's what the community tries to do. So Conversation with Tony Mobley is an outgrowth of that.
Well, you know what? We have a moment here, Tony, where we want to bring that community to you for a minute because they think you're pretty awesome too. So are we going to do it? It's coming up.
Someone has a break.
It's coming up.
All right. So here we go. Ready? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
I can't hear. Can you hear it, Tony?
No, we can't hear it, but they can.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you, Catherine.
So that's a pretty cool community effort, right? Yes. So there they are. They all gathered together. So how did you, stumble upon the community or?
So shortly before the pandemic, I was diagnosed with cancer. And I started my treatment in the beginning of March. And I had cancer treatments from March through June 12th was the day that I rang the bell.
Wow. I think we even have a picture of that. That's a pretty big deal when you finish your cancer treatments, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
So you had chemotherapy?
I had radiation treatment. It was 33 weeks, I believe.
Wow.
30. Yeah. Was it? No, it wasn't 33 weeks. It was 33 treatments.
Treatments, yeah.
33 treatments.
Well, Tony, you and I were both cancer survivors.
Okay.
So yay us. So. Yay!
So during that time, I was asked by my sister-in-law to help, my sister-in-law and my niece to help their family church with trying to figure out how they were going to navigate the pandemic. And so they couldn't do in person. As I said earlier, the pastor, Patsy Willis, 92 years old, and they had to figure it out. And so I made a couple of suggestions. We ended up going with Zoom, and we had to figure it out. So you have to understand that most of the people in this congregation were of of age, and I was kind of a youngster amongst them. And so doing this thing, virtual services, was kind of, it wasn't something that they had thought about. But believe it or not, we are now doing YouTube services. We're doing the service, Zoom service is going to YouTube. And right now it's private, but it eventually will be live broadcasts going from Zoom to YouTube, hopefully next month, which will be next week.
Very cool. Now I just have to say this to you, Tony, that we have a comment from Kimberly, who is your wife, I believe. And she says, yes, I am happy with the deal. Yay, Kimberly. Good on you. I would stick with them. And I'll just add, there's also a question from Tex Whitney from Sydney, Australia. On your Conversations show, who would be your ultimate guest to interview and why?
And this is I hadn't shared this before. So on my nightstand, I have an envelope. And on that envelope, on the outside of the envelope, it's addressed to Barack Obama.
Oh.
And inside that envelope is a thank you letter to President Obama, saying thank you for being on Conversations with Tony Mobley.
Wow, that's an interesting. So
the reason why I did that, it was a suggestion from one of my supporters. Her name is Rachel, and she asked me that question, and because she asked me that question, she said that's what you needed to do. You need to visualize it. I don't want to ask him about the presidency. I want to ask him about the things that he did on social media before he got elected.
You mean that got him elected? Is that what you mean?
Yes.
How he used it and his campaign used it. Wow.
And so I wanted to have a conversation about his thought process. You know, was it being the community activist? Was it that? Was it, having the law degree? What was all of the things that was going on before? How did you envision yourself, holding that office? That's the conversation that I want to have. What were the things that you experienced growing up that led you to think that that's who you could be? And so I think everybody's done the president thing. I wanted to do a different thing. I wanted to do a Conversation with Tony Mobley thing.
Well, you heard it here first. So who knows when that might happen? Do you see, where do you see Conversations with Tony Mobley going? Other than once you get Barack Obama and you've had your conversation, then what?
Well, Conversations with Tony Mobley, in a way, and this is going to probably sound a little funny to people, but in a way is a ministry, in that the idea is that some of the principles that Office Hours has in terms of people getting past whatever barriers that they have that separate us from one another, being able to have conversation with interesting people, regardless to what they look like, or what their political views are, or what their religion is, or whatever that thing is that keeps us from getting to know each other and really hearing that we are not as different as we might think. And so because the idea is that we continue to move forward till there's a point where we are naturally having these conversations with one another that we need to have.
It's fascinating to hear the stories that you've extracted from people, the differences in our backgrounds and the differences in our experiences, and how they shape us, and what we think, and how we argue, and what we want to know, right? And I think being an office hours widow myself, and I have come
now
to. I'm
need to
trying
explain
not
what that means. I know what it means, but you need to explain to those who are listening what it means.
Well, office hours was this kind of vague concept, and I suddenly started to lose my husband. Like, suddenly the hours started to pass, and I go, well, what's he like? Is he into something really nasty? Come down and there'd just be, bunch of guys hanging out on the computer. Someone would be pointing to something or showing their rocket ship that they were going to launch, or the latest gadget that they had, or whatever. Anyway, yes, I did in fact become an office hours widow. So I did actually look over his shoulder a number of times, and ended up sitting with him a number of times, because it started getting really interesting. And so, so yes, I don't know. Does Kimberly ever sit with you and just watch?
No, she doesn't. She doesn't sit with me, but she does have a lot of patience.
Well, that's
and
good.
Because I typically go all in when I'm interested in something, and so I started out on office hours with a really old MacBook Pro, and I did not have good lighting, and I was horrendous. And I was bad. And so I was in the master bedroom, and the light was coming in, and the silhouette, and I didn't have a microphone, and I sounded horrible. I looked horrible. And they let me hang out with them. It was the amazing thing.
So you got to hang out with the cool kids in spite of that.
In spite of that.
And then they tried to make you cool.
Well, this is the thing. So I was like apologizing, because I felt like the weak link in terms of this community. And I was at the point where I was like, well, I'm gonna back away from this. And then Mike Andrews, who passed away a year or so back, would reach out to me, and he would say, I like educators. I like educators. And so I want to help you out. And so he would send me stuff and cables, and I had, I was on Wi-Fi. Oh my goodness, on Wi-Fi on office hours? No. And so he was trying to get me these different devices that would, plug into an outlet, and you could run a cable from the outlet, and it would connect the internet to your computer, and a lot of different things. But the most important thing about my interaction with Mike Andrews was that he made sure that I felt welcome and a part of the community. And he would constantly, because I was constantly apologizing, because and Catherine, I'm gonna be very frank, the majority of people who appear on office hours don't look like me. And because I was on office hours.
I mean, because you have glasses, right?
Because I had glasses and I had a little bit more melanin in my skin. I didn't want to be the black man that was on there that was dragging everybody else down. And Mike said, you got to get past that. You are contributing to the conversation. You're making a difference in terms of the things, the questions that are being asked. You ask questions that need to be asked, because you're sort of speaking to the regular guy who's not a video production guy, but a regular guy who needs to learn and figure out how this stuff works. And so he was relentless. He would constantly call me and say, "Hey, I didn't see you on today. Why are you not on?" and so I gave in. And so I just kept on participating, and then things started happening. And so I said, we have the 7 of us meet every Sunday night at 7:00. And we have family Zoom meetings since the pandemic, and we have interaction with one another. And so I would telling them all about office hours, all on and on and on. And they were like,
"Shut up."
Yeah, they were kind. They would listen. And then one of my brothers said, my brother who's the musician, he said, "You need to tell somebody else about that. Well, all this stuff you're sharing with all this knowledge, all this experience, all these tools, all these education things that you're sharing with us, you need to share it with somebody else." And so, interesting enough, Conversation with Tony Mobley was an outgrowth of me trying to help one of my Morehouse brothers who was trying to run for office. And he appeared on Facebook like the original Tony Mobley, horrible face, camera up his nose, and didn't sound good, and all this stuff going on. And I'm a veteran of office hours. I'm going to save my brother.
You're going to whip him into shape.
Whip him into shape. Tell him all the good stuff he needs to do, and we'll turn the camera on and lift the camera up, and we'll lift the laptop up and show, watch your hit room, all that good stuff. And it ended up, well, we didn't work it out, but I had reached out to the community to help him. And so what happened was the community said, well, it didn't work out helping him, but we think you need to have your own conversations, and we're going to help you have your conversations. So Guy Cochran gave me the means of starting the broadcast. And then it turned into this thing where now I have a full-fledged team of people helping me make this wonderful experience. I think it's wonderful. It's wonderful for me to think of a person who 2 years ago had an old broken down MacBook Pro, horrible lighting, horrible sound, to be able to actually have a conversation with people. And I look pretty good. This is not bad.
You do look pretty good.
I got a nice
You
microphone.
Do. You have nice. You have a better microphone than I do.
I got great lighting. My sons bought me these high-end lights for Christmas. And so, and I've had a lot of people that help me get better. And so,
you are rocking it,
my wife has been
Tony.
patient. My wife has been patient enough to allow me to spend a little bit of my little income to help get better. And
even your birthday, she's letting you sit here in front of a computer screen on your birthday, Tony.
Yeah, she wasn't really happy about it initially because she, typically what we do is you go out to dinner on your birthday night, and that's kind of the thing that we do.
I hope this is made up.
We're going to do it tomorrow.
Okay.
We're going to do it tomorrow. So she's okay now.
Good. Now, I'm just going to say you're going to have to read the credits now because we have one last thing after the credits. So you go ahead and do your thank yous. And I know Kimberly's right at the top of the list there.
All right. Yeah, she's right at the top. She's always at the top. So we're going to do special thanks. So hello, everyone. Again, thank you so much for tuning in to Conversations with Tony Mobley. Catherine, thank you so much for this opportunity.
Okay,
we're good. This conversation. So we want to thank Kimberly Mobley, Ron Mobley, the Global Family and Friends, Alex Lindsay, Office Hour members, DVE Store, Liminal Entertainment Technologies, Byte Hive, Video360.com. Video360, I have to pause for a quick second, Catherine.
No, you can't. You can't, Tony. You got to keep going. You have 32 seconds, 31, 30, 29.
Proof Alone, Cloud Bedrock, Ken Jordan, Jonas Dattel, Aaron Huselich, Sherrick Cheetah, David Brady, Marcus Lee Folk, Richard Lavery, Chris Fenwick, Manolo Lozano, Jeffrey Powers, Bo Cordell, Mickey McAture, Hosmer Gajar, Douglas Mola, Laura Thompson, Bryant Shan, Dennis Champion Walker, Roscoe Jones, George Butters, Joshua Minden, and Conversation with Tony Mobley producer Clylock Lopez Waterman. And next week, we're going to have Sarah Deering, education and ministry. I said next week, Wednesday, 2 days from now, we're going to have Sarah Deering, and she's going to be on, and she is a powerhouse. Looking forward to having her.
Looking forward to seeing it, Tony. Now, one last thing before we go. Look, I have a special birthday candle for you. So can you blow it out? Go ahead and blow it out. Go, done. Look at that. It worked. Can you see? Did you see that? That's amazing. Happy birthday, Tony.
Thank you so much.
Many more.
Really appreciate it.
Bye.
Good night, everybody. Thank you so much. Sarah Deering, Wednesday night. Great educator.